Oh, right. Welcome back, everybody. I'll wait a few moments and let people join um, join this stream, and we'll get going. I better promote this on all the socials. Right, right. That's that done. Yeah. So while everyone comes in, I'll just say welcome back. And today I am going to be answering and going over this question debate, which is it sort of sparked in my mind with Sargon of Akkad, aka Carl Benjamin, who put a tweet out, which I'll get up, but I it looks like he's on holiday in Italy, in Florence, and visited like the Medici Palace and their private chapel. He's seen the artwork there, which is, um, you know, it's wonderful. The artwork there in Florence, Renaissance artwork. It's great to see. Um, you have the like works of David, you know, um, countless artworks you can see of various museums and also cathedrals there. And so it's a great place to see. But his um, statement, which is what interests me, and it sparked a bit of a debate, um, and it sort of triggered a bit of a reaction within myself, as it 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 wasn't so much it annoyed me, but it I thought in maybe it was a clumsy way of him sort of saying, "Oh, look how great this is. We don't have anything here." As a sort of a ironic statement, but it does sort of play into this, you know, how well do we actually know ourselves and our own group and our own history beyond just, basic basic knowledge. Um, good evening, Luke. Thank you for joining. So I'll just bring up the tweet a sec so you can all see. And I mean, it is a fantastic display of images and iconography that he is presenting here. I believe it is from the Medici palace. Um, yeah, again, fantastic. And I know this one is this. Um, I believe in blue. It's either Lorenzo or Cosimo Medici. Um, but this is in their private chapel in Florence. And again, it's for those people who are maybe sort of more eagle-eyed. In many ways, this sort of painting is more harkening back to traditional medieval style, so pre-Renaissance, um, than what we would assume. What I mean, when you think of Renaissance, you think of Da Vinci. Um, you think of those sorts of masters that created this sort of Rococo Baroque sort of style of art, which made made these sort of paintings and people more dynamic, uh, what you would say is perspective points, so greater depth of field in the image, wasn't so two-dimensional. um, so maybe this was on the cusp of that, but I mean, you're looking at the 15th century here, maybe early 15th mid 15th century. Of course, though, towards the end, that's when you have the more sort of newer forms of artwork, which was um, you know no longer um, only just religious styles, but more secular, um, go delving into the classics and drawing inspiration on uh, classical Greek mythology. Um, I don't know if I can find it because um, I think Carl actually, I believe Carl took a photo of um, Medusa, or what I should say is the the statue of Perseus holding the head of Medusa. Um, I'll see if I can find it. Hold on a sec. Uh, see if I can find it. Oh, there's more from France. So that's the Cathedral of Florence. That's I think it's like Saint Mary's um, or something. And again outside. I mean, it's stunning. The dome itself was incredibly quite unique. Again, inspired by the Roman temple. Um, that those sorts of domes, dating back to the Greco-Roman temples. Uh, I might not be able to find it. If I can't find it, then don't don't worry. But I think you all know what I mean. There's the statue of Perseus holding the head of Medusa. I think some years ago, feminists got a bit like arsy with that in America and tried to copy it. But yeah, so his oh, I've got the wrong one here. His statement. Let's just read Carl's statement here that he put out with this uh, tweet. If I could, here you go. Because I did a bit of, I did a sort of thing. You don't have to spend long in Italy to realize the English aren't a very artistic people, and sharing these images that we've just gone through, and it got me thinking. Number one, because this I know personally, and from my knowledge of history, not to be true. I find that we are very artistic people, and I think what's incredible is, and if you look at English society going back, you know, to its inception, I think as a people we're quite reserved, we're quite stoic, we're quite virile, and prone to violence and ferocity, which many of our neighbors in Europe and elsewhere have discovered and in some parts it's key to their national identity. But on the upside, it's not like a sort of purely violent civilization that is devoid of any culture or high culture. We and I think probably one aspect of liberal arts that the English people have dominance over has was the theatre. It was the stage theatre. It was the writings of likes of Shakespeare, um, as well, and the creativity around plays and stories, which outshines really anything that you could find. I would say you'd have to go back maybe to even nearest ancient Rome and Greece in sort of that level of comparison. I think what one thing you notice about the theatres, particularly, in the time of Shakespeare with the Lord Chamberlain's Men Company, which was the name of his company, um, was that it occurred during England's golden age under Elizabeth I. Now, and this is where maybe some might disagree. You could argue the golden age was, and some Protestants will argue that it was the separation of Rome. I mean, for me, I would say the golden age was that you had this long period of instability over the succession of Henry VIII and the separation of and I think it's important to remember that it wasn't like in Germany and Scandinavia and other parts of Europe of true Protestant Reformation. Effectively, the Anglican Church is just this schism of the Roman Catholic Church, where the monarch is the head instead of the Bishop of Rome. Um, Strictly speaking, Henry VIII didn't have any disagreement on church dogma. Not that, well, not compared to someone like Luther or founding Calvinism or what have you, or any other sort of Protestant form of denomination. So that's one important aspect to remember. I will say though, that being said, I think the golden age is sort of harkened with the exploration, the likes of Sir Francis Drake, um, the circumnavigating the world, raiding the Spanish, but also this, and I think what's interesting is in times of hardships, when people go where societies go through these um, you know, severe traumas, and I don't mean like in our modern conception of trauma where we find life a bit difficult, but actual true hardship where many die, there's many displaced, there's many internal problems which you know, whether it be through a succession crisis or dynastic or some sort of political crisis, people end up then redirecting that energy or looking for energy and redirecting it in a new place. And that's what brings in and sort of golden age in high culture. Looking at what Carl's got here, for example. So let's look at this um, as an example. What triggered the Italian Renaissance? Well, you could argue that the classical in you can see back in the previous century there's always been within um, universities, maybe even forms of monastic education, a fascination with the ancient world. They would still be taught the classics like the Iliad and what have you, Greco-Roman stories. But what sort of you brought this to a head is probably, and this is one argument I've seen, which I'm more favourable to, is with the Ottoman conquest of the Eastern Roman Empire, the fall of Constantinople, and the end of an Eastern Roman emperor, did sort of reimagine the mythology of Rome. You had Greeks. You did have in that part many Greeks, including artists, that would travel to Italy, and it would reinvigorate that mythology and that society. And also at the same time, you had within the church, bearing in mind you had a Western schism between various different anti-popes, and so the Catholic Church has just been reunited. Um, you had various city states which were powerful in their own right. They were able to forge their own identity um, on trade, based on trade, but also based on their independence from the powers of Naples and France, which were, still fighting and trying to dominate influence in Italy. But with the reunification of the church, you had a strong, united Rome and the papacy for the most parts in that case. And so it was all the stars were aligned, and I would say that's the same for this country. Um, I was going to say thank you um, Josh Wesson, um, thank you for tuning in here. I'm glad you joined us. I'll just go through a few in chat. So, uh, it was Henry the Eighth who removed the beauty from inside our churches, if I recall. Yes, you had the dissolution of the monasteries. You had, you know, the, uh, you know, I guess you could say the king's forceful way of subjugating the existing diocese around England into his fold. And in places, there are many monasteries which were destroyed, along with many works of art, literature, and even old Anglo-Saxon literature, which I think has probably been one of the greatest travesties in history, in English history. Um, Many have attempted, including Tolkien, to reconnect that past, and I think it has been largely successful in doing so, but it still has a major problem today, and it makes it easier for our enemies to deny our historical ancestry. I mean, they do it regardless anyway, but it just gives them um, that. And then you had the short reign of the the English and Scottish Commonwealth under Cromwell as well, with the Puritans. But it is important noting that um, even during the reign of the Puritans, the theatres were still open. I mean, they were uh, you know regulated, of course, but they were still open. Um, it wasn't like a total state or anything like that. Nothing to that extent, but it was still, not a pleasant sort of atmosphere for many people. Where is the energy and how does it fight entropy? Well, energy is, I believe that, and this is something, maybe people who are more traditionalist minded, I think energy comes from um, our own grouping, and I think from that is what we draw inspiration from, and we draw inspiration for things which are above us and above our own sort of like material world. The problem that you've got with art today, and I discussed this in previous streams with Alexander Adams, who's a friend of this channel, and he's done many talks on this. He recently did one with the traditional British group. So do check that out. It's a good lecture from him. But the problem that you got with art today, it is fundamentally uh, built and used for the modern masses. I believe great art, and I think great culture and society is elitist. When I talk about the works of the great masters, or even people like um, Edward Poynter, the Victorians, arts during the Pax Britannica period. Um, it is a select few of individuals who have great vision and are able to encapsulate their own time period through art and draw inspiration from the ancient past, but also make it solely about the excellent nature of Britain. Um, and the thing there is, and this is what I admire about imperialism and nations which are imperialistic, is they're unashamed of themselves and also inserting themselves in great works of moments in history and art. Today, that is largely frowned upon. That's frowned upon as well, uh, you know, uh, what is it? Copying one's culture, or self-inserting. A lot of particularly people who claim to be indigenous have a great sort of anger when it comes to things like this. Um, but for me, I think this is a great sign. Of course, in the Western canon, in what the similarities in England, in Italy, and elsewhere, is that we insert ourselves into biblical stories, whether that be from the Old Testament with the reign of, say, like King David, who in their own time was considered uh, an enlightened golden age of ancient Israel, or in course the ministry of Jesus Christ, which particularly at this time period, uh, all would want to be considered to be the most pious and the most uh, devoted to Christ, and would self-insert oneself into that story, which is uh, common for all people in all places at that time. Um, and so, yeah, I disagree with Carl on that point. That we do have a form of creativity. Uh, Much of our and I'll tell you what, I'll go over to Edward Poynter a sec. Let's just have a look at his I mean, for people who don't know or may not know, he is my favorite Victorian artist. I'm absolutely honest, he's my favorite artist. And I find his works incredible. I mean, I'm a history buff anyway, so it's not hard to see why. But for me, it's how it in my mind encapsulates. But before I go to that period, let's go back to the 7th century. And artwork doesn't just take the forms of painting or sketches or drawings. It also takes embroiderment, but also the stuff of armor, architecture. The king of the Angles, Radbold, who was we believe to be buried in Sutton Hoo, had this incredible helmet, and I think all of you will know the helmet. And let's just bring it up. Uh, let's bring it up here. So you're looking at the Sutton Hoo helmet. Now, this is a recreation, but what it does demonstrate here is the helmet itself tells a story. It tells a story of warriors. It tells a story of a serpent, which is frequent in Germanic mythology. It's a piece of artwork. It's a piece of artwork that the wearer of this wanted to be shown. And art itself and the storytelling aspect of art isn't something that is just for, fringe, idealistic individuals. The beauty is an elitist endeavor. It is something that kings, rulers, warriors have always wanted to demonstrate, because for that is what brings themselves purpose and uplifts others around them. Now, in some respect, and you could say that this tradition runs in the Western mind as well, in the more sort of extreme version of Christianity, and someone mentioned Puritans back then. The earliest form of what you would what you would say anti-art Christian persecutions, or what have you, would be the iconoclastic movement in the Eastern Roman Empire back in the 10th century and earlier. Fundamentally, their belief was that um, icons water down the message of God, but also that art itself is an impossible endeavor, because the world, if you are a creator who is painting or describing the world um, as you view it, then you are effectively um, committing heresy by presenting yourself as God, as a creator, and so the world is perfect enough. You don't need to, you shouldn't, and you don't need to paint it or reinterpret it, because that is a high form of blasphemy. And so that was the sort of logic of iconoclastic movement. Puritans had a similar idea, but probably more to down to the ritual than actual, any sort of attack on art itself. As I mentioned, I think many people, that maybe there's a bit of a myth there after the fact, but the Puritans itself, it was about the ritual within churches. So like the symbols of, you would describe with high Anglicanism, or what you see in Catholic churches today, and that was done away with, and it would be a simple wooden cross. All the fancy gold and, the gold dishes and what have you. And then quite interesting, because that is, the that aspect of Roman Catholicism is quite pagan in some ways. It's very much like, it harkens back to the imperial cult, the worship of the Greco-Roman gods like Zeus, Jupiter, Mars, Ares, what have you. It harkens back to that and those sort of ritualistic practices. I mean, the head of the cult of Jupiter was Pontius Maximus, which is a title given to the Pope. So, you know, that when Julius Evola said, he described himself, described himself as a Catholic pagan. He said, what was it, the through the ritual of the Catholic Church, or particularly that in Sicily, through, you see the ancient pagan world sort of peering out. Um, no interest in the actual scripture aspect of it, but the ritual itself. But going back to, this helmet, it demonstrates what would have been the detail artistic thing, and of course I will acknowledge this would have been the exception. Not every soldier at all, or warrior, I should say, would have been wearing anything like this, but it would have demonstrated, um, at that time, the elite in society's, uh, quest for beauty to be presented at wherever they go, especially in like a burial, because this was found at a burial mounds, in East Anglia, and uh, again, so from our inception, we have been a deeply creative people. So let's get to Edward Poynter. Here we go. So, um, this one here is, I like this one actually. This one is the visit of the Queen of Sheba to King Solomon. Again, here, this is, you'll look. This is a bit later, but you're seeing, this is what I would describe as, Pax Britannica. And Edward, one thing that you find with, um, one thing that I find really fascinating with, particularly cultures which go through in the West, high society, is how it does harken back to the ancient world of, Rome and Greece. And I mean, it's not should not be a surprise, given the influence of the Roman Empire. I think the Roman Empire, in just, pretty much invented reality that all Europeans understand today. Um, and the Greco myth itself, the mythology around, ancient Greece itself, is what informs that reality. I mean, from that combined fusion, birth of Christianity, which descends from the ancient world, um, was brought forward and influences everything even to this day. But even during Rome's and Britain's greatest feats, that this was this was what he draw inspiration. Yes, and as we'll get on, I mean, I have my theories of. I'll say at the end why I think the why what happened, the reasons why beauty creation um changed after the post-war. I will give my reasons of why I think that that took place. Here we go. Now this was, I think this one is the thumbnail. So yeah, this is another good one. I think I think this is the siren. Uh, this is the cave of the storm, the nymphs. Again, this will probably get this will probably get like an age restriction on it, unfortunately. But again, it's the level of detail in this and the reflection. One thing I've always liked, and this is something that and I've seen it recently, and it sort of boggles the mind of how one can do this. Maybe I'm not creative enough to do this because I do like my sketching, but and painting. It's actually how perfect he gets the light like touching the body and the shadows of it. Like in his mind while painting, he already knows what position the sun is in and the shadows and everything. I mean, it's incredible. The detail of it is I just can't imagine it. Yeah. Psyche and Temple Love. Actually, now this one is a good harken back to my Greco mythology stream and the uh, Psyche. So this is a good little callback. Now this one, very famous one, Faith unto Death. This is about the Roman legionnaire. Um, while the eruption of Pompeii, um, the story is that in one of the castings of people, there appears to be a Roman legionnaire, Roman soldier who um, still stood to attention, stood guard, because he never received an order to do anything but. And this is demonstrating the, you know, I've actually spoken to a few people about this. I remember I spoke to Morgoth some time ago and about this image, and of course this was referenced by Spengler about how the strength of society. If you think about it in this context, this Roman legionnaire here, you have people panicking, you have death in the background there, you see bodies lying and people being burnt and fleeing. You behind the image, so from he's looking off behind the away from the painting. You have the eruption taking place, all hell, the gates of Hades and what have you opening up. But in his defiant stance, even though a wee bit of fear for the nature, he is still holding fast, and from in my mind, represents the strength of the Roman state. And of course, there was a Roman legionnaire who stood there to attention. That this is the strength of Rome, and this is the strength of a society, which in our modern world is a very alien concept of this sort of duty to one's own role. But when people, whenever someone says like, "How did the Romans do it?" or "How is it the Romans were able to govern in such a way?" I would always reference them to this image because this image itself is what Rome was about. Beyond the pomp and everything, this was the uh, fanatical belief that was instilled in every Roman citizen and every Roman of their own strength and everything. Um, it's quite hard to really comprehend. You know, I don't. Most people don't have. When you have a real elite that can install all sorts of beliefs into their populations that you can't even imagine, that the likes of Edward Poynter could. And you know, this is Pax Britannica and Pax Romana looking back at each other. Okay, and Andromeda here, the fortune teller. I will say Edward Poynter does have his favourites, doesn't he? He likes his brunettes, doesn't he? Hello, Iron Duke. Hello there. Good evening or good morning, I should say to you. Zenobia, yes, Poor Zenobia, who led a revolt against Rome, tried to split. Of course, she was dragged before Rome in chains. Widow of well, we believe some high-ranking Roman official. Um, Again, you know, the incredible detail as well, and the crown. Um, you have it's actually quite incredible because you have like the Egyptian influence of the Serapis on her arm, and then like the Roman crown with the Greco and Roman gods on there being depicted. I mean, he was a true master of his craft when it came, and also the research for that. He would have. It's probably not a million miles away from historical accuracy. Yeah, she was given a nice retirement in a villa outside Rome. Yeah, I mean, she was dragged. It was symbolically, dragged. Uh, Submission to Rome. Mm. I mean, her expression, I would say, is largely uncertainty. It is uncertainty mixed with anxiety, which is fair enough, bearing in mind what she did. um, it's not unwarranted. Um, so yeah, this uh, uh, what I've always Diad Diadmiri. This one's in the Royal Albert Memorial Museum. Again, um, I will say, and I know some critics say that he um, stuff of like water and certain objects he struggles to, but you cannot deny that he is probably one of the best out there of painting marble. To actually get that, like, the actual marble brick and everything is spot on. If any of you ever seen marble, that is, it is spot on. The pattern, the shape of it, the look of it. I mean, to touch marble and the coldness of marble, I can feel it even looking at the screen. Yes. on the temple steps. Again, you got this one. I I was going to say this one is. I would say it's one. I was going to say my least favorite, but it's it's one that interesting that some of them are you know um it's strange. It's like he has a he's great at drawing marble and the silk, but then I think maybe like the fruit and something is a bit um you know it's not the best. I don't know. It could be wrong. That might just be my interpretation, but it's like this one is my least favorite. But blossoms. Oh yes. Um, this one here, Israel in Egypt. So this is again another famous one. I believe this is Memphis. This is depicting Memphis, and again, one thing I again is the lighting. It is the lighting. It is the sun is on so in this image, for example, the sun is on the left side of the screen of your screen that you're watching here. Um, Surely the painting of Buckingham Palace stand in contrast to the admittedly fetching Euro ladies. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, as I say, he's got a type. He's got a type when he depicts women. He likes his brunettes. Mm. Oh, here we go. The catapulta. So, like, I guess you could say, like Roman siege, the Roman siege weapon. I think. Which siege is this one? Is this the siege of Jerusalem? I think there's a siege of Jerusalem. I'm not entirely certain actually, but or maybe this is Carthage. I am not entirely certain, but again, um, incredible. Um, you know, again, detail on the clothing. Even the Latin inscription there of soldiers carving onto the siege weapons, which we know because the Romans would carve onto stone. Maybe Dacia, could be. This would be after SPQR. Mm, yeah, maybe first century. It's I'd have to do a look at that what that's depicting, but Barney, fantastic. Water babies, the vision of Endymion. Yeah, now this is a good one. The A visit to Asclepius. Again, the Greek influence here. Oh, there, this one, the Ides of March. Yes, again. Now this one here, interior lighting with the marble floor reflection lighting, incredible, absolutely incredible. The sky, um, take it or leave it, but interior work here. Um, I mean, you could say the sky is less animated because he wants you to be focused on not even the two figures, but the image on the face statue on the left. I mean, the shadow is incredible, absolutely incredible with the marble. and it's quite interesting because you know everything is darkened and it's faced on this, and it's like the impending doom, and that there is this looming shadow behind them. Bearing in mind with the Ides of March, um, which we all know. The story to the assassination of Caesar by Brutus and other conspirators. Oh yeah, the corner of the marketplace. I think we went through this one. Oh yeah, the Ionian dance. Again, pretty good marble fabric. Um, have we seen a blonde? Have we seen a blonde woman in all this? Mm. I mean, to be fair, he is depicting many Mediterranean women, so you wouldn't necessarily see that. But yes. Oh, Cave of Storm. Yeah, we've seen this one. Oh, the Bells of Saint Mark in Venice. Yeah. Now this one, actually, this one's sort of an overlooked one. Let me just see if I can. I can't really go any further. But yeah, the Saint Mark, um, um, the Bells of Saint Mark. This one is obviously looking from the bell tower, looking out over the city of Venice. Um, Again, uh, a very much incredible lighting, but also, and this is something I struggle because in the distance you can see he has put incredible detail into the outline of cities. I mean, you got the tower there, which is opposite, um, uh, the famous tower there of opposite St. Mark's. But you also got the the cityscape there. Incredible detail, and it's sometimes I wonder if it's deliberately he doesn't have much detail in um, aspects of his paintings because he wants people to be particularly focused. I mean, I criticized in the previous one, the Ides of March, the sky and everything, but everything, the lighting itself, it was completely darkened and shaded, and it was all focusing on that one uh, uh, head bust image of Caesar, which was illuminated in the sort of menaced manner, of impending doom. This one, and how a bit different is, you know, what I would imagine to either be to sunrise, um, and the bells to hearken in a new day. Right. Let's, uh, should we do a bit of Turner? Do we feel like doing a bit of Turner? What do you guys feel? Yeah, let's do a bit of Turner. Um, yeah, let's do a bit of Turner. We'll do it. The crowd demand it. I have to please the crowd. The masses demand it. Right, let's make a start. So this is King's College Chapel, Cambridge, um, on the riverbanks there. I've actually been here. before, so it's quite interesting to see this. Again, this is one of his um, sort of works. Um, Maybe not considered the greatest, but definitely accurate and quite good. It's the- very much clean, light colored. You see him here with the uh, you know, sort of like start of like shadow and reflection here. Bear in mind, this is earlier. This is a bit earlier than what we were looking at earlier. Of course, this one here, uh, rockets and blue lights, steamboats, and this is something that I've always found is that, and I'm not, there are some people who are a bit Luddite-ish with this, but I think you can depict in the Industrial Revolution, um, like Turner and others, in an artistic way where, I mean, it looks aesthetically pleasing, and it does depict a form of beauty, because beauty in itself is a form of is human creation. And so if it's human creation, it's definitely a form of beauty. It's why I don't think AI could ever be beautiful. And this is important, what Iron Duke was getting at. Turner was an impressionist before the French. This is it's quite a radical step away. And it's why I don't like the idea when the people say, "Well, Britain, English people aren't radical." We are radical. We are radical with our ideas, and the way that we view the world is all in a radical way. Um, you have. I'm just going to say, Fisherman on the Sea. I do like this one again. Lighting. The sort of desolate nature, the loneliness of it. Um, I do like my lighting and art. Um, Modern Rome. I, you know, I one thing I do like is that throughout all this, whether it be this period, is how you can find beauty in the ruins of Rome. There are many paintings that we've seen. There's the classical one, The Fall of Rome, but it's actually that sort of beauty. And I think what's quite interesting is, as Iron Duke just mentions, Turner was all about light, and that is true. Well, let's look at this one very quickly. So, modern, what he calls modern Rome. In this one, you have the light is more predominant on this in this painting on the left side. So in the sort of newer city of Rome, you've got your cathedral, you've got your sort of more contemporary modern buildings there, and the sort of darkened shadow on the right here. The shadow which is sort of hanging over is old Rome itself. This is maybe the Palatine Hill, or what have you. You got the Colosseum in the background, Senate Forum down in the center there. And so that this is, a deliberate thing of, you can't escape the Rome's past. And um, you know, in some ways it feels like the British painters had a greater admiration for Rome than maybe some of the Italians. I don't know, but probably not at this point. But there was a time, of course, when a lot of the Colosseum went from being a rubbish dump in early medieval period to being the site of down and outs, to then to a church and everything. It has been repurposed. Um, the reason we have the Elgin marbles was because the Ottomans were using the site of the Acropolis as like a storage, ammunition storage, and was you know aspects of it were being damaged. Um, you have periods where you know and it's sad where nobody really cares for the past or cares for preservation, and so these sorts of buildings and stuff are just left to rot, fall apart. Stones being taken and borrowed to repurpose in other buildings. Um, but also, let's look at the painting. Another bit of it is the tallest object in there is that Roman Corinthian column, from an old temple or Senate building, and it towers over existing Rome, still dominant, still ever present. And then you have the figures down here, people still, maybe goat herders or what have you, or common people still. What are they doing in there? Have a look. What's it? Yeah, goat herders, shepherds, something like that. Yeah, absolutely incredible. Yeah, Mussolini cleared out the ancient Roman Forum. He did. He did, and he very much. You know, again, you have various periods where there would be excavation work. A lot of it's actually been relatively recent. So even today, they're still finding new areas, new buildings within Rome, which um, amazing me, it still hasn't left like that. So just go forward a bit. Yeah, the angler, the fishing one. This for the fishermen out there for Morgoth and 99 Iron Duke. Yeah, fantastic. Oh, what's this? Lovely proto abstract art before the abstract became shit. Yes. It's incredibly individualistic, it's incredibly um you know it as I say, it's incredibly individualistic, and it's um demonstrates like a clear sort of purpose. Now, I think art should have it should have some purpose. Today you have like in where I live, unfortunately, the likes of Banksy is, the sort of sacred figure, and while he is, he, he quality wise, he's able to produce good icons and everything. Though for him, it's all egalitarian. It's all about it's not just a comic aspect, and you can have like a comic aspect of your art, but it's all egalitarian. It's all like uh, appealing to the lowest common denominator, and I don't like that. I don't. I'm not a fan of that. I find that lazy, and I find it uninspiring because that's just going along with the modern man. I want something which, when I think of art, I think it has to go against the grain. It has to be confrontational. It has to, and what I'm interested in has to be something which, even if it shocks and horrors and disgusts contemporary people, as long as it's something, I'm all for that. Coniston Fells, Cumberland, yes. Again, as Iron Duke said, the lighting. Don't Dutch boats in a gale. Yes, great one. I will say though, so far, best depiction of clouds. Those clouds look incredible. This ocean looks incredible. Let's do a, can I do a wider? I can't. Okay, don't worry. Incredible. Um, Again, the lighting comes down. You have the ship sort of like throwing you back and forth, um, depicting the wind itself, not just the currents. Um, yeah, again, lighting, incredible. Bear in mind, this is earlier than Pointer, so this is a lot. This is some quite a bit earlier. Joseph Mallard. Here we go. Again, another ocean-bound depiction. Is that the one? Is that the relatively recent one, Iron Duke, with that actor who played Pierpoint? I forgot his name now. Oh yeah, London from Greenwich Park. Yes, when London was smaller and you had actually a real park. Again, sort of more. Now again, playing with the lighting, playing with the even featuring a bit of um, smog in the background, a wee bit of it, covering. In the distance, you can see St. Paul's just sticking out there. Yes. Oh, it is. Oh, I have to check that out. I avoided it at the time because I thought it might be a bit unfaithful and all that, but I'll have to check it out. Um, now this one I do like, the Water Ferry, Cornwall. Um, and I will say, as someone who comes from that part, these sorts of docks, because they're not really docks, it is coves. It's villages and stuff that exist in coves, and the buildings and everything, still very much like that today. If I was to guess, I would say um, I wouldn't know where this is. I would have to. I'm thinking like Padstow or something like that. But yeah, I was going to say fantastic. Um, Again, it's actually one thing that you're starting to see here is more refining of reflections in the water. Um, Not so much a great emphasis on people, but on the surroundings, which is something you can do, especially when you're looking at the light. All of this feels like, sort of like the early morning start of the day. Mousehole. Ah, Mousehole. Yeah, no, Mousehole. It's Mousehole, is it? Yeah, it could be. I think you're right, Einshuk. It's just there's a couple buildings there which I don't recognise. Maybe they were there then, they're not there now. I don't know, but hmm, yeah, Mousehole. Very good. Yeah, again, use of light, clouds, possible smoke. Oh yeah, Cornwall is beautiful. Bodmin Moor. yeah, daughter, uh, Dordrecht. Again, this one's a very detailed one. Sort of getting into more detailed one. Let's look at that. So you start to have more of animation of people, reeds, water, animal, plant life, city in the background. And I think what's important with Turner is at that time the energy and the inspiration beyond the industrialized, aspect of Britain. It was our it was our naval power. It was our sea power. It was um, all things sea power because at this point this was sort of the animating principle of Britain, and it's at this time we discussed in our history streams with Iron Duke that you had pretty much you know you had a century of you had centuries of where nothing very little happened in Britain, but then you'd have centuries of uh, you know the War of the Roses, the Tudors, the Stuarts, Civil War, Restoration, William of Orange, various uh, split society along Catholicism and Protestantism, conflict there, and then sort of great imperial expansion, the Seven Years' Wars, particularly in North America, then losing the 13 colonies, then the Napoleonic Wars and the rise of those liberal revolutionary ideas from France, and then defeating Napoleon, fighting Napoleon, defeating Napoleon. And so, in some ways, Britain was being trying to rediscover its identity, trying to bring its people back together again. Um, and through that, and it's why Lord Nelson, why we remember him in his death, because of this, Britain was its, I mean, its jewel was its naval superpower. It was that's what it was, and that's what everybody was sort of was inspired on. The Roman Empire had their city, and it had um, their sort of sacred city. For us, it was the ocean, and it was the sea, and the island of which we come from. Ah, the field of Waterloo. So again, this one very bring this in here, and I'm certain Iron Duke will have something to say on this. But again, the lighting in particular, focusing on the hold on a sec, let me just go back to the image of the dead here, the cavalry, the officers, the uh, widows, the sort of women. Um, it's bleak, and one thing that and you can say about Napoleonic Wars, and this is something that the traditionalists have always been critical of, is because of the Napoleonic Wars, it created the full mass conscription of society, and it formed the mass and total war aspect of society. You know, gone are the days of these individual warrior families in armies fighting with champions on both sides, taking challenging each other, and and um, gone are those days, and sort of I would say minimal casualties, but not on the such a grander scale that you would start to see during this period and onward. And you know who was it in chat here? um I mean, yeah, that's the locals robbing the dead, but they're sort of depicted in a sort of more grieving manner about it. But how I've always viewed it as sort of a more grieving sort of aspect of it. But maybe that's him playing on the that and it was at Lukey World says bleak, and it was a thunderstorm before before Waterloo. Yes, there was. Um, that particular light there is, I mean, you could say, it's the Holy Spirit or what have you, but it is like a sort of darkness that's like a cloak of darkness, like a sheet of darkness covering the land. And you could say this is Turner being quite critical of, this is a critique of actual the modern state of warfare where there is no honourable. I mean, let's take Iron Duke's point here. They're saying, well, this is locals robbing the dead, and you could say, well, from one perspective, that's them robbing the dead. The other one is that there is like an aspect of mourning, particularly let's like here, this woman here, sort of in shock and disbelief, and of the death. And you see here, you got French, French cavalry and redcoats, British redcoats here, all mingled up in the bodies. Um, it is there is something that there is um, you know there's no sort of great heroic feat here. There is just um, painting something of no heroic outcome of this. There is, in many ways, I think this is just a critique of modern warfare. It's a straight up critique of the horrors of war. And in some ways, when you look to the right of the image, you see flames, you see fires. I mean, this is hell. This is hell. And up there you have the one bit of light, which is heaven. Okay, Cologne, the Royal Packet Boat. Yes. Oh, now this one is, I think, one of my favorites here, and this is the uh, Dogner and San uh, uh, Goya, and this one, of course, is Venice, Turner's Venice 2. Um, so, like with Edward Pointer, bit further beyond behind the images here, but this is you've got the Doge's Palace. You have on the right here, you have St. Mark's just a bit beyond that. Um, and this is showing the various gondolas, but also the merchant naval power of Venice. Um, yeah, it's a bittersweet thing. What's quite funny is that I don't say funny. Where I live, there was uh, remains of what they believe to be a Viking warrior was found, like skeletal, barely skeletal remains and all that. And he was buried. He was obviously killed, maybe by some like local militia or maybe locals. Who knows? He was killed, bludgeoned or some bludgeoned to death by the looks of it. And he was buried in a Christian way, even with his body facing towards Jerusalem. So even in that context, he was given greater honors than what, and he was and in that scenario, he was a foreign invader, you know. And we are told that they were the barbarians. So, um, This isn't painted from the perspectives of the Giudica like Canaletto. No, it isn't. And um, this one here, I would say, yeah, this was more painted from the perspective um, of a ship. And if you look at you can see the shadows here again with the port, with the sea, and also, where the horizon meets actually, one thing I do like about this is the horizon meets the cloud. So when what I do like about him is in this particular one, the um, perspective here has a greater emphasis actually on the sky and the horizon. He could have, done a bit more with the ocean in this one, but for this one, he really wanted to show off St. Mark Square and Venice, a bit more of Venice and its you know, naval collection and gondolas. The burning of the House of Lords and Commons. Here we go. So yeah, um, this one being a bit different because this is a fire. So the lighting itself at the source doesn't come from from anything natural, but the um actually from fire. And again, lighting, reflection, direction of it, wind. Um, you can see Westminster Palace in the background, Westminster Cathedral. And obviously a bit of historical context here. This was the medieval palace. Part of it was destroyed in 1834, October 1834, in this huge fire. Um, and the, obviously this led to the rebuilding, but this was like the medieval part. And it also I think it was St. Stephen's Chapel, the House of Commons, uh, and then the House of the Speaker and the Clerk of the House of Commons was completely, because originally before Westminster was kind of like a collection of properties with a market in the middle. Um, you have the old House of Commons, the Lords, the chapel and the cathedral, and then in between you had like this sort of bustling market. So it wasn't like it was closed off. It was actually quite a busy, constant use of public space. Of course, the famous um, uh, Guy Fawkes and Co. used um, uh, rented out room in the cellars below Westminster Palace as storage, which for the gunpowder plot. Hello, Nathan. Great you could join. In 1830, the old commons burnt down by two Irish workmen. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a very tragic image that, that it's tragic because it is the medieval building itself is been swept away in the wind. You have the people watching, many people watching, and it's I mean, again, Turner's capturing this very tragic series of events unfolding. Sort of harkening back to the Great Fire of London, which of course it survived, but it didn't survive this. Another perspective on the Great Fire. Another perspective on the same fire here. Again, gates of hell. So it's sort of looking like the gates of hell here, and the lighting. The coast of Northumberland. So Lord Nathan, this would be up your way. Um, this one, again, incredible lighting. Um, and actually, not too unrealistic if you ever go up that way, particularly in the morning, certain times a year, you do have like this, you know, angelic lighting, and when people say, like, um, so I mean, certain parts of England is always God's own county. I mean, for me, Somerset is God's own county, but when you see the natural lighting on everything like this, it it does appear that way. It's not entirely fictitious. Um, you have the lighting, you have the people sort of battling the elements, battling nature. Um, Very interesting depiction, the sort of battling nature. I think I do like the idea of man battling nature, because what makes nature real is sort of the creation of man. No, 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 no. Sorry. Sorry, no, no, there's not. Yeah, to be fair, yeah, it could be Devon. Some of the if you're going through like Torrington, or sorry, not Torrington, Torridge, Central Devon, and places like that, you could and you see various sorts of like lights, particularly you know over the rolling green hills. It is incredible. We've spent about an hour and a half looking at works of art and depictions of our home and everything, and I have to say, I mean, it's more important than really any sort of stream looking at like the latest nonsense of a migrant or some lefty or some moronic government minister. It's uplifting. It 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 feels great to be talking about this with people, and people in chat. I mean, all of you are quite engaged. I'm surprised. I was worried this stream no one would really tune in to check this out, and that there'd be any interest in it. Talking about British art and culture. Um, if we got a bit of time, because Iron Duke did remote, we'll talk about maybe the art in Greenwich Hall as well. Um, that's again another one. I think we got a bit of time. Why not? Of course, the famous one, the Fighting Temerier. The famous, this is a very famous one. Probably his most famous. I think everyone sort of knows about this one. Again, you know, lighting incredible. Slave ship. Yes, rough waters. Difficult conversation. There you go. Yeah, and it's got light, a beacon of light, Iron Duke. Here we go. Snowstorm, steamboat off a harbour's mouth. It's like a. Mm. So you don't see much snow pictures. The evening of deluge depiction of rain. Sort of like in a circular formation. Very interesting. Rain, steam, and speed. Yeah, steamboat. Sorry, steam train. Again, incredible viaducts. I love viaducts. I love viaducts. I love aqueducts, but I particularly love viaducts. You know, engineering. Um, there's when I lived in Cyprus, there was still a viaduct which was built by the Romans, still in use. Believe it or not. I mean, it wasn't just the roads. Um, and the Britain built the very first railway. Yeah, it's important to remember that people at this time of Turner's time of these paintings, they are the ones that built the modern world, the world today, or the material, like the physical world of today. They didn't build the sort of metaphysical, spiritual, social world today. That was done by others. But the physical world today was built. The ingenuity, the creation, the amazing designs were built by British people. The and that is a reality. The modern conception that this was all some great effort and that we were, um, of the poor and downtrodden, um, uh, you know, Johnny Foreigner is a gross lie that we have built this. And um, it saddens me that there are people. I mean, it saddens me that maybe Carl didn't mean it in this sort of complete sentence, but it saddens me that he had this, that even himself, I mean, I don't know what is he like in his 40s or something, that there's so many people in this country with this sort of conception and have no knowledge of this, that when they think of the Victorian age, and I was embedded with this as a child and everything, that it was this great age of inequality, that everything was awful, everyone was awful, life was miserable there, and nothing great happened. It's a gross, gross lie. It's a terrible lie. Our society was great. It was as close to perfection as possible because it was unequal. And and this is the hard thing, is inequality does create greatness. What you see today of equality and zero, you know, value is, you know, just turn on the news channel in Britain, and what you see is, you know, if you want that's what you get. I was gonna say, yeah, the steam engine, um, the Cornish invention, and Nigel come back with it was what, a Scot. I believe it was him looking at his kettle pot, not sort of like boiling over a bit, so that sort of intrigue the mind for steam. Bit of a digression, but I love Duke and Co. talk about the age of sail to steam, mechanized transition. I mean, we could talk about that. The Britain in the packs. Just after the navy, just after the Napoleonic Wars. So after 1815, um, in the sort of age of 1830s into early Victoria's reign. Yeah, I'd be up for that. I think, yeah, would you be happy with that, Iron Duke? Yeah. It'd be good. I tell you what, if we were to talk about steam engines, if we were to talk about steam engines, we would have to get Alex, the steam guy, on. I think Iron Duke would agree with me that I would not be comfortable to do a stream about steam engines without Alex, the steam guy, to talk about it. Because he would be like, I mean, he's like on that, and I've relied on him in the past. He is like number one expert. He's out of anyone in the world that I know about with steam engines, he is like the number one guy because he's still him and his wife Birdie operate um um these steam engines in Devon to this day, and like I think they do it weekly. It's incredible, and I've seen it. I've seen them. You know what is a shame? I was down there, but I didn't approach them. Of course, I am anonymous. I am I refuse to reveal my sort of hidden identity. But I have seen them operated, and it draws many people. And it puts to bed this myth that people aren't interested in these sorts of things. It's liberals who aren't interested in these sorts of things. They feel ashamed. They're annoyed by it. Um, I just assume they hate beauty and creation and greatness. They just have like this. It's kind of like this sort of vengeful, will to live in mediocre, mundane societies with no creation, no beauty, no taste. It's just, it's like the ultimate narcissistic power trip. Anyway, Ilig Anglin Viaduct in Wales. Yeah, I actually got a photo. People would find you. They would just look for someone who looks like Augustus. I used. Do you know what's a shame? I used to have curly hair. I used to have curly hair, and now I'm balding. I'm losing my hair, getting old. It's horrible. No one should live past 40. Nobody should live past. I mean, I'm saying that Iron Duke's like 20 years beyond that, even so. But maybe Mishima is right. We all live past 40. Shave it off. Oh no, I look like I look like freaking Bryan Cranston from 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 Breaking Bad. I look terrible. I'm looking at, to be honest, I'm with like the bald patch on my head and everything. I'm looking a bit like Julius Caesar. I'm looking a bit like Julius Caesar, to be honest. No, I avoid the Nero neckbeard look. I am cautious. Of course, as a massive. My favorite, of course, is Caligula. The best Roman emperor out there. Um, I um the real OG. The, Caligula was the real artist. Plain disguise, glasses, and fake mustache would defeat them. Yeah, yeah. No, I've got a like trench coat and hat and everything when I go out in public. You know, then I'm the master of disguise. Uh, Norham Castle sunrise. Oh, fantastic. Ethereal, um, deeply ethereal, you know, semi-spiritual sort of depiction of our landscape. I mean, we talk about castles here, and Nathan's in chat. You know, we're talking about this sort of r- rightful glazing of by Turner of our national monuments and structures, that it's almost mythological in nature. You know, it in his sort of interpretation of on many interpretation when you see wildlife and nature around these castles, it's not, it's actually part of nature. It's past, time has passed so much, it's actually become one with nature. It's like a part of nature. The wreck boy again. Yeah. The departure of the fleet. Was this the one I Chuki wanted to talk about? You were you wanted to, which one? I think you mentioned one Iron Duke right back along. Uh, I'll see if I can come across that one. Maybe if we've already gone through it. Fighting Terrier. I think we might have done that one. Don't worry. I think we reached the end there. Um, yeah, you showed that. I showed that one. Should we just do Greenwich Hall? Let's do Greenwich Hall quickly. Let's look at Greenwich Hall. The old Royal Navy Naval College. So let's do a quick share. Why do you think Carl thinks the English aren't artistic? Is it a lack of knowledge, or is he onto something, onto any, or is he onto anything at all? I think Carl doesn't think the English are artistic because, um, in his mind, and maybe this is some sort of, maybe this is like ideology of his that's, you know, people change politics. Maybe this is maybe like a sort of leftover from his previous beliefs, but I think he has this sort of idea that England, particularly after the Reformation, was just this purely utilitarian state. You know, we had our naval power, we had our greatness, and he just thought, well, it was all about you know, it was all just mercantile. There's no everyone was sort of semi-nihilistic, no sort of value or anything like that, and it was like the, and that art is actually um, doesn't doesn't really represent greatness. It's more of a luxury than anything else. and so the sort of more backward Latins and southern types of southern European types were into art, but they weren't really exploring or achieving great things, which of course is not true because you had like Columbus and John Calvert and Italians that would explorers and charters and everything. But I think there is this sort. I think maybe that was his sort of view, um, and uh, it's a shame. I mean, there is great British art out there. In in most civilizations, you do have a bit of a high culture, and Nathan, as I said at the beginning of the stream. If you were to look at the liberal arts more sort of broadly speaking, where Britain stands out, and yeah, a lot of our artwork we were looking here was later than the Renaissance period of the 15th century, but at the same time as the Renaissance and the artwork that Carl was looking at, you had the explosion in the stage and theatre world in England, which was outshining really anything else, the types of stories being told, the recreation of Greek tragedies in contemporary modern form, the likes of Shakespeare, drawing on classical world and everything, which of course the Italians were doing with their art, like Da Vinci, or the representation of Perseus defeating Medusa, and uh, sort of displaying her beheaded, her severed head in statue form. Um, all of that was being depicted, and you can, and I think what's quite ironic is some of his the images that he showed in that particular tweet that we were referencing was actually religious art anyway. A lot of the great Renaissance work was maybe somewhat secular or pagan. It was actually quite pagan. It wasn't directly Christian or biblical inspired, but pagan stories, and so it was a bit out there. Of course, the Medici family, which they would show off their piety by demonstrating their devotion to Christ and to the Holy Mother Church, but also to the pagan world as well through classical storytelling. Um, and we did this with the theatre at the time, which is quite remarkable given the English sensibility. Um, isn't really, we're not really a society that is in a public facing way, you would think to be, inclined that way. We're quite stoic as people, like the whole like stiff upper lip sort of stuff. And some of it, there is like a earlier version of that, which is true. We are quite an orderly based society. We don't sort of get hyper excited, but we're able to channel that in theatre to great effect, um, and great impact the world over, even to this day. That Roman Caesar that was a yeah, they brought up my fringe again. Uh, there are a huge amount of fine art. Yes, and you go back to the Anglo-Saxon, even medieval art. I mean, I talked about recently. I went to a chained library at a cathedral, and I looked at books on uh, deerskin and cowskin, and the forms of writing by the deacons were embroidered with gold, which illuminates in darkness. I mean, that's art. That is a form of art. That was all hand done. This is before the printing press. This was all done by hand, and it was a form of, it was art. It was art. Um, it it had When they dimmed the lighting or took it into a sort of a slightly darker room, it illuminated. It was incredible, just incredible. You know, and it's all here. It's all in our home. Britain is more. There is a, and I think this is something that I find really I struggle with sometimes with people, is that particularly on the right, is particularly those that like to post the aesthetic stuff, is they get so caught up in modernity, that okay, your local town is crap and everything. It's crap today. You've got Starbucks and Korean shops and Turkish and Kurdish barbers galore up the street and everything. But don't for a second think that there isn't something. There is no value anything left in this country. And one thing I cannot stand, and this is the thing, I am seeing more and more on the right this anti-intellectualism, which was reserved for the left, is what I would describe as how the left behave. You know, I mean, we know like the whole thing, like you see it every other day. Like the whole Saint George being Turkish or something like that. These sort of moronic people who have no historical or any sort of inclination to pursuit of knowledge on the left. They talk about it when they talk about imperialism or anti-colonial. I mean, anti-colonial studies is one big anti-intellectual effort, but there are people on the right who have sort of swallowed up slop content, where that goes the other way, and um, it it's frustrating. I do think, though, the future of any successful British right-wing or revivalist movement will come from the arts. It always comes from the arts. If you look at Western society, anything that is good, great, or the beginning of a golden age comes from art. That is why I'm a big, big supporter of someone like Alexander Adams and uh, people in his crowd, where they are pushing genuine art, which is radical and it's different, but it remains sort of faithful to traditional forms in some capacity. You know, it's different. It won't be the same as Turner. It won't be the same as you know Edward Pointer, but it would have the same effect, and that's what's important. It could be that this was just posting for engagement. That is true. How he mixes materialistic image with whimsical abstraction. Yes, it's. I mean, he's sort of enchanting the British landscape. He's enchanting the world, and this is at a time when we're told where the start of the modern world, and there is a visceral reaction against some of aspects of industrialization through art, which I do respect. We could do a stream where we all picked our favorite 5 British paintings. That might be fun. Yes, I'd be up for that. I mean, oh God, I would definitely be up for that. Um, no, 100%, 100% indeed. It's strange how few great composers the English have. Yeah, I have found there's a wrong-headed strand of thought among some that artistic is airy-fairy and a waste of time. Yeah, I've noticed that as well, and I do actually wonder if, I mean, a lot of it today, I noticed there's a strand of it that came with like the sort of more capitalist, free market Tory types. It's like, oh no, it's about making life. The purpose of life is making money. The purpose of life is money, 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 24/7. The purpose of life is money. The purpose of life is growth, lines on charts and GDP going up. The purpose of life is endless flows of people and capital. capita into your nation, into your coffers. You know, that's the purpose of life, apparently. Mm. You see it with some unwillingness on some of the right to engage with the arts at all, who will at the same time almost defy business. Yeah, no, true. Yeah, not so much, but genres like rock. Yeah, yeah, pushing the boat out is present. I like Handel as well, to be honest. Aaron Hook made this point a few weeks back about intellectuals on the right. Yeah. I mean, we're not. I will say, me and Aaron aren't the first people. I mean, I'm not the first person to notice this. Aaron, there's quite a few people on the right that are starting to notice this. There's a YouTube channel called Richard the Third, I think. He's noticed this. AA's noticed. There's a lot of people who have noticed this, and in America as well, and other places that they have noticed this. And some of it, I think a lot of it's been the advent with AI. It's a Morgoth, another. I think Morgoth has been like the really has managed to articulate this incredibly well. Bingle, I think a lot of that energy went into science and invention to us. The mind of the composer isn't too far away from James Watt or Stevenson. The integration of parts into a harmonic whole. I do like the. Do you know what I do like is the sort of sorry, I do like the eccentric creator of like the individual inventor sort of thing. Um, I do like that sort of uh style of British person that you have. I mean, recent times that would be like your radio operator, amateur radio operator, or something like that. Sort of more of a sort of dumbed down version, but still. Yeah, Nathan be up for top five British painters. Find a good time to do this. Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's almost said that British thought is rooted in practical empiricism, while continental thought leans towards romanticism, idealism. Yet Robert Burns predates the European Romantics. Yeah, no, I don't think it. I think there's a strain. Right, this is where I get. I think there's a strain of Protestant thought that willed that belief into reality. I don't think it's true at all. I mean, it's not true, is it? There are no English uh, Bernays or Cavalotti that there are there. I mean, I would say that it wouldn't matter because it offsuits itself in other forms, you know, literature, writing, and theatre. For some reason, the British are really love their theatre. They're better at their theatre, but they also have, you know, later on they were heavily influenced by forms of art, art and painting that predates some of the, in creating its own forms. So I wouldn't really say it does just because it doesn't, follow the exact same trajectory. I mean, Italy was benefited from the um, sort of teachings and practices of people who were fleeing the Ottomans. I mean, maybe if Greece was next to Britain, then maybe we'd be different. I don't know, but yeah. I mean, you could make the argument Turner was the first impressionist. Yeah, you could. You could do. Yeah. My father, to his credit, told me, "You need enough money to find happiness and fulfillment. The money itself doesn't matter." Yeah, I mean, you should always, look to, benefits oneself, but I find the sort of cult, the free market stuff, and a lot of the sort of Thatcherism cult of markets. I find it grubby. I find it lowbrow. I find it distasteful. I find it unbecoming. I've always found it, even when I was a member of the Tory party, years and years ago, I never fully accepted it. I found it just too dirty. I found it just too dirty to respect. Yes. Gothic. I mean, there's so many styles of writing Gothic, and even to this day, I mean, relatively recently, you have great literature work. I mean, of course, you have likes of Tolkien, Bram Stoker. You know, I was going to say, yeah, great. Yeah, literature work. Yeah, corporate lifestyle makes me very unwell. Yeah, true. I think art. Um, I think the problem that you got is what most people when most people say, "Well, I don't like it this or that because it's political." It's not so much that it's because most things are political, and I mean everything's really political and ideological. But the problem is the politics of the day is astroturf. It's fabricated and it has no authority over people. If there was a piece of political work which was challenging to the mind and to the person, to society, but also holds some level of truth, I don't think we would object to it. Yeah, that Wall Street, that there was Gordon Gekko, greed is good type of sentiment. It's kind of like, in many ways, it's sort of like um, the it's sort of like I was going to say like a sort of a high. It's like a inversion of a hybrid sort of Nietzschean pagan world mentality of of, of without duty, but just amplifying the selfishness about it. It's just something incredibly selfish. It's like an inversion. It's horrible. But anyway, I've been here for nearly 2 hours now, so we're going to end it here. But we've had a very good time. I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed this very much. I think all of you've enjoyed this. I mean, chat's been lit up this evening of people. Everyone's really enjoyed this. Um, do you think we should do more art? I should do more art streams like this. You know, British ones, maybe further afield. I think I should. I've enjoyed this. Yes, probably. Like Germanic skalds and the what is it, like the Norse Germanic poetry as well. Yeah, I mean, there's a long history. There's a long history of literature like this, of writing down, of oral stories and storytelling runes. Yeah, I think everyone would enjoy that, and maybe I will do it on Iron Duke's channel or my channel. I don't know, but we'll get Nathan, get Iron Duke, get sort of organise a date, and we can do like our top 5 British artists, maybe, and maybe get Alexander Adams as well on, and just have like let's just talk about art. Fuck politics. Just let's just. I don't care about politics anymore, or anyone like that. Let's just talk about art. This is an art channel now. Sorry, everyone. No more politics. This is an art. This is an art and military history channel, and semi-religious channel as well. We're just going to talk about like art, paganism, military history. This is what we're doing now. No more politics. I'm stepping over politics. This is the thing. You should do streams that bring you joy. Let's just talk about art. I had enough of this. That sounds like a plan. Oh, and of course, castles. The Pendragon. We'll talk about that as well. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.